They say the mind is the final frontier, complex, mysterious, and hard to truly understand, even for the person living inside it. But certainly, are ways to peek behind the curtain and gain insights into what someone else's mind is planning. Psychological techniques that seem almost like mind-reading magic. This video will disclose 7 dark yet powerful methods to decode people's thoughts and motivations. 1. If they're nodding too much, know what it means. Nodding is a common nonverbal signal, but excessive nodding can actually reveal what's going on inside someone's mind. If you notice the person you're talking to is nodding far more frequently than normal conversation requires, it likely signals one of 2 things. First, it may mean they are subconsciously seeking your approval or validation. The over-nodding gestures, an eagerness to show agreement as a means of making you feel accepted. On the other hand, vigorous nodding can also indicate the person is trying too hard to convince themselves of whatever point you are making. The vehement head bobbing reflects an inner resistance to fully accepting or believing the information. It's as if they are overcompensating with the emphatic nodding motions to overcome their own doubts. This excessive nonverbal signal doesn't align with genuine conviction. A third possibility is that the incessant nodding simply stems from nervous tendencies or ingrained habits. Some people are naturally more demonstrative or fidgety, so the frequent head motions don't necessarily carry deeper symbolic meaning. However, by being attuned to any changes from the person's typical nonverbal baseline, you can separate gestures that are merely idiosyncratic versus revealing over-signaling of their psychological state. 2. They seem uneasy. Listen carefully to what they say. When someone seems uncomfortable, anxious, or ill at ease in a situation, their speech patterns and word choices often betray richer insights into their inner experience and thought processes. Rather than dismissing the surface appearance of nerves, lean in closely and listen with deep attention. Chances are, the person's self-narrated experience leaks through in telling ways. For instance, excessive qualifiers and hedging statements like, "I mean," or "I guess," or "I'm not sure, but," frequently pop up when someone feels uncertain, nervous, or fears negative evaluations of their remarks. Profuse verbal scrambling or repeatedly revising and clarifying their own statements also signals grappling with inner tensions around confidence or clarity of expression. Additionally, listen for leakage of revealing subtext as they attempt to make sense of the discomfort and coach themselves through it. Admissions like, "I don't know why I'm feeling so awkward about this," or projections like, "You must think I'm being weird," grant a window into the person's intuitive experience. By committing full listening attention, you can often perceive the threaded emotional narratives beneath the overt words that enlighten you to their covert mental processes. While it may seem counterintuitive, what someone doesn't say can prove just as insightful as the words that do emerge. There is often great psychological meaning and context embedded within the silent spaces, pauses and gaps in conversation flow. An astute listener carefully attends to both the spoken and unspoken channels to gain a richer understanding. For example, lengthy awkward silences after you've asked a question or made a statement can indicate the person feels uncomfortable, is desperately formulating how to respond, or is actively withholding information from you. Briefer micropauses and stalling voices trails like, "well," or often signify the person is self-editing in the moment and censoring their immediate instinctual reply. In contrast, dramatic pauses strategically placed for emphasis serve to underline the importance the speaker assigns to whatever comes next. And seamlessly flowing conversation without any gaps can either signal a rehearsed or superficial narrative detached from deeper self-reflective processing, or it may reveal when the person feels very authentic and grounded within the dialogue. 3. See if their emotions are forced. Even for talented actors or skilled fakers, it proves extremely difficult to manufacture and sustain full emotional authenticity over an extended period. There are always subtle micro-expressions and bodily desyncs that slip through and betray when emotions are being forced, faked, or performed in contrast with what's truly being felt inside. One of the primary indicators is a lack of full-body congruence and synchronization with the intended emotion. For example, If someone seems to be putting on an upbeat, cheerful demeanor, inspect whether it tracks uniformly across their facial expressions, vocal tones, posture, hand gestures, and eye movements. Or if some channels seem subtly disconnected or lagging behind. Genuine joy tends to animate the entire kinetic system with fluid spontaneity. Another key factor is monitoring the accessory responses that accompany viscerally experienced versus artificial emotional states. Real sadness doesn't just register in the face and voice. There are associated physiological reactions like tearing, throat tension, reddened skin, and shifts in breathing patterns. In contrast, a forced sad expression often feels more like a postural attitude or surface mimicry without the deeper organismic textures. Look as well for subtle inconsistencies in the emotional through line. Authentic fear or anger doesn't simply turn on like a light switch, but rather rises through progressive intensities over time until reaching a peak volume. If the forcedness seems to abruptly erupt at full blast before dissolving shortly after, the emotional delivery likely rings hollow because it arises from cognitive enactment rather than visceral experience. 4. Ask provocative, open-ended questions to see their reaction. While paying close attention to nonverbal communication is invaluable, you can also guide conversations in ways that encourage people to freely share more of their inner thoughts and feelings. This is done by asking open-ended questions that can't simply be answered with a one-word response. Instead of closed questions like, "Are you upset about the situation at work?" Try an open alternative like, "How have things been going lately with the reorganization?" Open questions gently probe for expansive elaboration, rather than shutting things down. You can follow up by summarizing their response and asking, "Is there anything else about that?" to unearth even deeper thoughts. You can also reflect feelings overtly like, "That situation seems really frustrating for you based on what you said." This demonstrates you're listening and prompts them to expound further, while also preventing them from just giving terse, surface-level replies. Mastering this interactive technique keeps conversations organically flowing towards more genuine self-revelation. Again, one way to gain insight into someone's inner thoughts and feelings is to ask provocative questions and closely observe their reaction. The key is to ask questions that are personal, edgy, or touch on sensitive topics in a way that gets underneath the surface niceties. For example, you could ask, "Have you ever been so angry at someone that you actually fantasized about hurting them?" Most people would claim no, but watch their micro-expressions as they answer. A brief look of discomfort or a micro-gesture like clenching their jaw could indicate they are concealing having those types of dark thoughts. Another provocative question could be, if you knew you could get away with it, is there anything illegal you would consider doing for a huge profit? An instantaneous defensive response, rebuffing the notion, might cover up underlying temptations toward unethical behavior for financial gain that this question exposes. The point is to craft questions that get the person's mental gears turning about taboo subjects their self-conscious mind might normally dismiss or repress. Then carefully observe any subtle signs of psychological arousal as their unconscious mind grapples with the subject matter, fidgeting, change in vocal tone, shakiness in responses, and so on. These reactions can clue you into issues, fears, or impulses they normally keep hidden. 5. Trick them into being on your side so they tell you everything. This technique involves using psychological manipulation to slowly lure someone into a mindset where they feel you are an ally and confidant who they can safely open up to, even about very personal matters. It has to be done gradually and with careful setup. First, you want to find some relatively innocuous area of agreement where you can build rapport by saying things like, "Yeah, I'm totally with you on that." Nodding, mimicking body language, and engaging in general rapport building lays the groundwork. Then you can move to making slightly leading statements designed to pull them further into alignment with your perspective. Like, "I bet you found a lot of people don't really understand that though." As they co-agree, you can double down with reinforcing remarks like, "Exactly, it's like we're on the same wavelength here." Gradually, through patient reinforcement of feelings of similarity and shared perspective, the person's brain gets tricked into perceiving you as an insider, worthy of trust and disclosure. At that point, you can start asking more probing personal questions, but doing so with emphatic empathy and nods to having been through that too will make them increasingly willing to spill. 6. Leverage cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance refers to the psychological discomfort we feel when our thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors seem contradictory or hypocritical. And this dissonance actually motivates us to relieve that mental tension, often by adjusting our beliefs or attitudes to resolve the discrepancy. A clever mind reader can use this tendency to their advantage and strategically introduce inconsistencies that prompt self-reflection and change. For example, you could make an observation that seems to clash with how someone sees themselves. Like, I'm surprised you weren't more sympathetic to Sarah's situation, since you've always struck me as such a kind, compassionate person. Planting that dissonant seed often compels the person to adjust their perspective to realign with the positive traits you've identified in order to relieve the discomfort of the apparent lapse. Used judiciously, this powerful principle provides a way to reshape someone's mindset through their own self-persuasion. 7. Leverage the Dolores effect. Most people are familiar with the phenomenon of being watched without being able to physically see the observer. This feeling of eyes stems from the dorsolateral prefrontal regions of the brain, detecting even the subtlest of cues that indicate someone's attention is fixated on us. A skilled mind reader can covertly manipulate this effect to make someone feel observed and self-conscious without them knowing why. Slightly slanting your head while maintaining steady eye contact is one way to trigger that sense of scrutiny in someone. Or you can hold a prolonged pause while they are speaking, making them hyper-aware of the silence and spotlight being on them. Even just angling your torso to directly face them communicates a laser-focused observation that penetrates their comfort zone. Once they start feeling that prickling sense of surveillance, without any overt cause, their self-consciousness increases, and they become more compliant to avoid any imagined negative judgment. If you have made it this far, let us know what you think in the comments section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.